Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Scott Gerber, he's a law professor at ONU, is back with us today. We're talking a little bit about what you're going to see on the November 8th ballot as far as state issues. Number one, the Community Safety Amendment. I saw Dave Yost, you had a quote from him in an op-ed talking about the presumption of innocence versus basically common sense as to whether a career criminal poses a threat once they give out. Does this, in a sense, give judges a little more leeway in determining that bail?
Yeah, there was an Ohio Supreme Court decision in January that said that judges, lower court judges, trial court judges were not allowed to consider public safety when setting cash bail. And so this amendment is designed to essentially reverse that decision and require trial judges to consider public safety when setting the amounts and conditions of cash bail.
Yeah, any idea what brought that about initially? I'm sure family and friends that are, crime victims themselves or know someone who was, they love this idea because, in a sense, there are times I'm sure a judge knows when they set bail or don't set bail that this person's going to commit a crime again. I guess it gives a little more say in whether this person gets back out on the street.
Yeah. Of course, the argument against it is that the defendant has not been convicted yet. He hasn't had his trial yet. And so why should the person have to sit in the slammer if he might eventually be acquitted? And so the argument running the other way, however, is, well, sometimes the evidence is overwhelming that the person committed a heinous offense. And so for purposes of public safety, make the judge take that into account. Because lots of times, you read it and see it in the news all the time, people out on bail sometimes commit additional horrific crimes before the trial for their original offense.
Let's talk about state issue 2, citizenship voting requirements. One of the things, you teased this, I think, last month or the month before, talking about how important this issue was, whether an elector has the qualifications or whether they're an immigrant or a U.S. citizen. The key, I think, is that it goes back to what we saw in the 2020 election, and whether you can have a slate of electors in a sense that you choose yourself that aren't qualified to do that. Give us a little bit of background on this one.
Well, this one, the second one requires voters in Ohio elections to be citizens of the United States. Okay, and that sounds straightforward. But Yellow Springs, which is, as you know, is the most left-leaning town in Ohio, allows people that are not citizens of the United States to vote in their elections. New York City does the same thing. And so this one is simply trying to emphasize the fact that citizenship and voting go hand in hand. And so let's require people to be U.S. citizens before they vote in Ohio elections. And of course, the counter to it would be that immigrants who are not citizens or not yet citizens still should have a voice in their communities, and that voice is heard most effectively through elections.
The other thing that we try to stress in these two is that we don't always see state issues on the ballot. There hasn't been a ton of them that have gotten on. There hasn't been a ton, in fact, that have been approved. You were talking about these are crucial. These are big issues in something if we're going to vote, these are the key ones we definitely need to vote on.
Yeah, and the reason I wrote it, and it was published in the Dayton Daily News, was most people, when they go to the voting booth, think they're voting for the governor or the state legislature or a judge or something like that. But there's occasionally amendments to the Constitution, the fundamental law of Ohio, on the ballot. And this year there are 2 of those. And as you pointed out, it doesn't happen often. It happens more at the state level than, say, at the federal level, but it still does not happen often. And frequently these are very major decisions that people have to make. For example, the 2 on this year's ballot are enormously important.
Yeah, very good points on both. I hope people do get out and vote on these. The sad thing is, I have the feeling that the pessimist in me says that the percentage of people that actually go out and vote will be slim. So maybe if they could do some homework on these, like you'd mentioned, they'll be a little more urged to do that. Thank you, as always, Dr. Gerber. We appreciate you explaining it to us.
You're welcome, Jeff.
You bet. Nice chatting with you. We'll be back after this.